We talked about the prior art piece in the sense of invalidating yourself. So you can do your own, but there's also other things that invalidate you too. So any patent or publication anywhere in the world that's already out there on your invention is an invalidator. So if someone, and we can get into practicality in a minute, but from a theoretical perspective, if somebody in Mongolia writes it in Mongolian, your new chair, and you didn't see it even, and you come up a year later or 6 months later or whatever and create your chair, that would be prior art because it happened before you. So even though there was no conceivable way you could find it, it would be there. So that's prior art. Same thing with the patent application. So any patent application submitted anywhere in the world can be considered prior art. We talked about the 12-month grace period, so that if the inventor discloses it, then he has 12 months in the US only to then file and not invalidate and become his own prior art. And then we talked about that piece as well. So one other thing to talk about, which is practicality piece of it. So I mentioned this, off the wall Mongolian in Mongolia, creating a publication or a patent. That's not going to be found by the patent examiner. They don't have the time or the resources to find it. What it could be found, and this is where you may have heard cost of patent litigation is incredibly expensive. The average cost right now, I think last year was about $700,000 per side for patent litigation. Okay? So, and I mean, that's each side, right? Now, if it goes to trial, you could be going up into the $2 million range or more to do this. And the reason is because of this discovery component. So the patent examiner has anywhere from about 8 to 16 hours of actual time he spends looking at your patent application and doing a search and deciding whether or not it's patentable. When Apple decides to go out and try to find prior art for Samsung, they don't have a limit on how much money they can spend to go find that, right? So that's what opens up that door for that discovery. So they can go to every country in the world and translate every document, right? And do all of these things that are incredibly expensive. But if it's $1 billion or a $2 billion or a $10 billion, potential profit, damage, award, whatever it may be, it makes sense to spend that, right? It doesn't make sense if you're, if you're doing $50,000 a year in business. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So, you have to take the business component into play, but you also have to realize that when you step into this world, you're stepping into these potential areas. So, the reason I bring that up is that these types of off-the-wall, things happening in other countries are not going to really come up during that process. It'll only come up if it's challenged and if it's worth a lot of money down the road. But it's important to know that could be there, and that's a potential. So I don't suggest, if you're going to file a patent, to start translating every document in the world before you file, but know that is still always a possibility out there. So the patent steps. So these are kind of the 5 steps that I recommend moving forward. So if you're looking to get a patent, first you want to do a patentability search. Again, the story about how if we're being chased by a bear, I don't have to run the bear, I just have to outrun you. It's kind of the same thing in the patentability search. We don't have to find everything. We just have to find more than the examiner is going to find, right? So that's what we want to do. We want to do an extensive enough search that there's a very low likelihood that the patent examiner will find something we didn't, or whoever's doing the search will. But you need to find a little bit more than that, right? It doesn't mean you're going to find everything. It doesn't mean you're going to be through all of it, but you need to make sure you kind of do that. So I highly recommend that to be the starting point. It can also tell you 2 things. It can tell you, 1, do you have a unique invention? Because you may be, oh my God, I'm the smartest guy I've ever met, and I came up with this great idea, and I don't see it. I've Googled it. I don't see it anywhere. But somewhere between the neighborhood of only about 5 to 7% of all patents are actually in commerce. So there's a lot of patents that are out there that aren't being made, that aren't being produced, that aren't there. There's no requirement for that, but they're still valid and enforceable if infringed upon. So someone could have come up with something that was a terrible, that was ahead of its time 10, 15 years ago, and there's 3 or 4 years left on its patent, and now it's ripe, but that person retired or died or quit or did something else, right? Now you come up with something very similar or identical, and then all of a sudden you're infringing on that, right? And so there's a potential that that person could then come back at you and say, oh, you're infringing on my patent. So it's good to make sure you know kind of the pitfalls you could get into. It also can help make sure you know how to navigate around what is out there so that you can make your application most likely to get issued as a patent. And the way to do that is the search piece. So second step, of course, you file a patent application. The third step is what will happen is you'll get office actions back from the patent office. And these will be either, hooray, issued patent, then we're done. Pay the fee, and now you have a patent. Most likely you're going to get some sort of an office action back that says, either anywhere ranging from no way, this is never going to get patented because of X, Y, and Z, to we will give you a patent if you make these changes, to we don't understand what you invented, you need to explain it to us. Like you can get all sorts of varieties. And then you gotta go back and forth with the patent examiner about that. And there's different levels you can go through. So you can, if you don't get where you want to go, you can upgrade it to the supervisor. If you don't get where you want to go there, you can appeal it to the the Patent Appeals Board. So it just varies in that respect. So that's where you get that issuance or denial. Again, you have various options to go from there, and then you can appeal if necessary if you're still not happy with the result. Now, it's important to know, none of this is what's considered to be litigation in terms of infringement. So there's so many different ways that these things can go, because during this whole process, there's a period of time where a third party can now challenge you on it. So that can happen as well. So a couple things here, and then we'll be close to wrapping this thing up. But assignment of IP rights. You've got employees, contractors, and owners. It's very important to make sure that you're having the proper assignments from your employees. If you're the owner of the company, a lot of owners forget to assign their own IP to their company, and God forbid they get hit by a bus. Now their IP can be in probate, and people don't realize that sometimes. So that's important to make sure that you're assigning the proper IP to the entity that owns it.